All right. For today, I'm going to just introduce to you, okay, another important aspect that related to the last week. Last week we talked about such a model, okay, the knowledge creation that happening in the organization, and of course such a model also can be applied beyond that organization, meaning that it also can include in terms of the personal how to apply such a model, okay. So such a model is actually very important because in your test later on you have to apply that, okay. So make sure that you really understand on how you can apply in order to to suggest solution or to analyze case, so that's actually the expectation from that chapter, okay. And then apart from that, okay, I'm going to just introduce to you, okay, another what you call this important theoretical model, okay, that actually in management we actually use the resource-based view that look at the resources, okay, as part of attaining competitive advantage from the viewpoint of organization. So in this context, we are looking at the what you call this knowledge, okay, as a resources, knowledge as asset, okay. And of course, the resource-based view is actually slightly different than the knowledge-based view of the firm, okay. Resource-based view just treat knowledge as part of the, one of the asset, okay. While the, what you call this, okay, the knowledge-based view, another the same like Nonaka point of view, they treat knowledge as actually a strategic resources, okay. So that, but that's actually not that important at your levels, okay. The only thing that we looking at is actually knowledge as important resources, okay. Before I go straight to the resource-based view, I would like to start first with the just a recap about some of the things that we haven't actually covered, but it's actually part of the important one, okay. Okay, let's just go back to some recap, okay. So we actually learned last week about the searching model, okay. So S stand for what? What is stand for S? Anyone?
Socialization.
Very good, okay. And then E stand for?
Internalization.
Externalization, okay. C stand for?
Coordination.
Combination, okay, very good, Dian. And then I stand for?
Internalization.
Yeah, internalization. Okay, so that's actually such a model. Okay, we actually learned that in for the knowledge actually to be created, okay, in the organization, and of course the Nonaka point of view is actually looking at the innovation. Okay, how actually knowledge can be converted, okay, to to become to be part of the innovation culture, innovation process that happening in the organization, okay. So he proposed that there are process that involve, he call it such a model, okay, from socialization, internalization, combination, and externalization, combination, and internalization. Then it's going in the looping again, okay. And then this model of knowledge creation is actually can cut across section, department, division, and even organization, okay. So when we look at the what you call this okay, when we look at the viewpoint of the what you call this the spiral of knowledge. Spiral meaning that it keeps just expanding, like we say that knowledge is actually finite resources, there's no scarcity in knowledge. The more you use, the more that you expand, it keep multiplying, okay. So that's actually the context of knowledge, okay. So what you call this ontological, if from the viewpoint of research, it means that what is knowledge, when we talk from epistemological, it means that how do we get knowledge. So that's actually the research term, or from the philosophical side. So when we talk from the knowledge levels, okay, we argue just now, as you see, knowledge is actually, can cut across individual, group, organization, and inter-organization, okay? And then this is actually can happening when you are starting to externalize and also internalize, okay? when we are actually internalize knowledge, we are actually looking at the ontological dimension, meaning that what is actually the, the knowledge that actually relevant to us. Remember, we talked about knowledge is actually very subjective and it's actually related to individuals, context. Okay, so and individual judgment, individual view of knowledge. So that's actually where the internalization coming in from the what is actually knowledge. When we're talking about externalize, okay, externalize is actually related so much, about how do we actually, go on and share and expanded the knowledge. So how, okay, this is part of the epistemological, okay. And of course, the tacit knowledge is actually the socialization side, okay. But the more that we internalize it, okay, so the tacit knowledge start to get what you call this, you see the shape here, okay, the tacit knowledge start to be codified, so there will be more explicit knowledge, okay. So that's actually the context of how we read in terms of the spiral, okay, spiral of organizational knowledge creation. So what it says is that, the organization actually view that knowledge and resources. So knowledge is so important for innovation, and the more innovative the organization, they will actually, having a knowledge creation activities very actively, okay. So that, and it also can cut cross individual, group, organization, and inter-organization. Another what you call this models also that important, another component also that important for the Searchy model is actually, we call it as a bar, okay, bar concept. It's a space-time, okay, where it argues that the searching process to occur, okay. So this is bar is actually the concept. You can look at bar as the environment, the ecosystem, okay. So that this is actually where Nonaka argue that you must actually have bar, in order to allow this kind of searching model to happen, the process to happen. So, and in the context of the process model, okay, so the bar itself is actually the one that we shared, okay. So you have the whole environment, ecosystem in the organization, the vision, mission is actually very crucial, okay, the strategic direction. And then what happening inside between us is actually, when you are actually passing the tacit knowledge, there will be a lot of dialogues, okay. And of course, in order to produce or to drive into a meaningful knowledge that contribute to the what you call this innovation, productivity, you must have the objective or the organizational goal that people share, okay. And then you actually, when you try to explicit and internalize, make it knowledge explicit, and now you internalize and you keep practicing it, okay, for the mastery, and also to reach for the what you call this the competency of doing things, to become strategic, knowledge to become strategic, you practice. So this is actually where the whole environment ecosystem produce what we call it as a learning organization, okay. So this is actually from the theoretical viewpoints. Coming back, a bar is actually very, very important. It's the shared context, okay, that can allow the motion, the progress, the flow of the knowledge creation, okay. And then when we talk from context specific, we define according to time, space, and relationship, okay. For example, like in this environment, right, we have now, this is a bar concept for us, for example, using Zoom, and then Puan Rohaya and you having this relationship as an instructor, and you are my students, and then at this particular time, this is actually our classroom, okay, our classroom time. And then the space is actually digital space. So this is actually how we define the kind of bar that we have right now, and also whether that we are actually creating knowledge together in this particular space, okay. So a bar, basically a shared context where knowledge is shared, created, and utilized. Okay, so these are actually the concept where you can understand easily about bar. Okay, and then it is actually having energy, quality, and place where the individual convert to move along the knowledge spiral. Okay, so it's not just about physical space, but about specific time and space. Digital also part of bar. Okay. So it is actually a concept that emphasizes on interaction. And then, and of course, there is another term, actually communities of practice is shared with a similar concept. We're going to look into that later on, what is actually COP, okay? Community practice as a place for learning. So bar is really a place for knowledge creation, okay? For example, you know, this morning, Parai asking you to actually start with the usual activity we have, the breakout activity, okay? And then Parai give you some tasks, okay, to research. So you are actually creating, you know, within your group, okay, your own bar, okay, using the asynchronous, for example, maybe a lot of you using the WhatsApp. And then you are creating knowledge, yes, because you know you have to produce something, like you have to research the organization, and then you have to respond to my question, and then you have to put it in the Microsoft Word. So after you socialize, you know, you using the tacit knowledge, now you put it in the explicit knowledge, put it in the Microsoft Word, okay? So the knowledge creation, meaning that when you creating knowledge, meaning that you gaining more understanding, okay? So when it happens from not knowing something, now you know, then knowledge is actually created. Okay, so this is actually the simplest concept when we look from the viewpoint of the bar, basically, you know, related to knowledge creation. So these are the examples that we see. So you have to have a bar first, okay? It is a platform where you convert knowledge. Convert meaning that you go from the process, from socialization, you know, from tacit knowledge going to explicit knowledge, you know, and then you combine, and then, you know, okay, and then you go into the internalization. Okay, so it is actually a knowledge conversion. And then a space for self-transcendent, meaning that you can include many kind of what you call this relationship inside. You can cut cross individuals, groups, and so on. So it's a multi-context place. It can be digital, it can be physical. Okay, and then quality and energy. The bar itself is a conversion, meaning that it needs certain quality experience to be engaged. For example, even I have about 78 students in my class right now, okay, probably only 30% or 20% only engaged in this quality, while the rest, they just come in and log in, you know. I also do not know because I cannot see, you know, you guys, you know. So those are the kind of things that it depends on the quality, okay, and also the energy that being produced, okay. And then in order to have a very productive or very constructive bar, okay, you also need to look into the what you call this the details that involve in the quality and the energy, okay, because these are the input and output that allow for the conversion of the tacit and explicit knowledge, okay. So the same that we are doing right now, okay. So this is actually something that we have to see from that context. Okay, so how do we activate you know, knowledge emergence in bar? Okay, how do we have a space and contact like we have now? So one of the things that actually the criteria, you have to be self-organized and have own intention, objective direction, and mission. So in setting up these classes or teaching courses for today, Mariah already structured to you lesson plan for you, okay? And then you have to do on the self-organize your own, okay? So that, you know, you can actually, you have a very specific direction, you know, and mission that you want to achieve. So this is actually one of the condition, okay, and when I activate that, because this is actually what we call formal learning, okay. And then, and of course, you are as a participant, Pariah also as a participant. So we are coming together. I have to take care of the courses and you coming as my student. So we also have the sense of, the shared sense of purpose. In this case, we need to complete what you call this, the teaching for this week, okay, the lesson for this week, for today's session, so that we can move on to the next session. And then we have to get done effectively within 3 hours, okay. So these are actually our shared purpose, okay. And then you are also bringing in, you know, your own kind of knowledge. That's why the first activity that allow you to do on your independent learning. So inside one what you call this group, you have about six members, 5 to 6 members, and then each of you going to bring your own set of knowledge, okay. So you are actually you know, having that kind of knowledge differently, okay, because knowledge is actually very subjective. And then even we have the boundaries, but we have to be open, meaning that, you know, we must allow those kind of interaction to happen. And then of course it requires commitment. Okay, so these are actually the five, what we call this, how we can activate the bar space. Okay, so the best thing to reflect about the bar concept, just to look at these classes and with you, and then you can, you know, jot down what actually we discuss about it, apply it in the context of the classroom that happening right now. Okay, for example, one of the recognized one, we have actually social media. Okay, but you know, how many of you actually going to social media like Facebook? You are actually, you know, involved in the knowledge creation. Maybe some of you just go there, just browse through, but you know, you probably not actually learning much, meaning that there's actually nothing actually happening there. Okay, but knowledge creation actually can happen using the digital, what you call this, social media network. Okay, if you're part of the knowledge community, or you have your establish your own you know, social network that having shared a purpose, remember the five elements that to allow that knowledge creation to happen. So you yourself actually structured in such a way that, you know, you can actually use it as part of the you know, knowledge creation activity. Okay, so the social media can become an effective bar also. Okay, from the viewpoint of such a model, if you actually can activate all the elements. Okay, so for example, the, you know, the Facebook already tackling on that part. Okay, WhatsApp also becoming part of the important bar, for example. Okay, this is just to give you some examples. Okay, pantry, office pantry. Okay, a lot of organization, you know, they are actually investing a lot, because, you know, when you have the pantry like this, they can allow collaboration. So these are actually example that happening in Singapore office for what you call this Airbnb and Twitter and Facebook.
And in education, changes in curriculum and changes in pedagogy need to be well supported by changes in learning spaces. For decades, our learning spaces have been prefixed to century-old designs. Spaces with rows of fixed seating that prioritize one-way communication and impede collaboration. Spaces that are not flexible enough to support different learning purposes or to simulate real-world scenarios. And spaces that are underutilized due to their unstimulating and unwelcoming settings.
You know, context point of view. Another, like I mentioned to you about the resource-based view, this is also part of a very important theoretical orientation that we have to understand at our levels, to look at the knowledge as resources. Okay, so the resource-based view theory actually assert that you know, every organization, they possess resources. Okay, sumber. Okay, and then organization use resources you know, to achieve a competitive advantage, and of course to sustain, not just achieving but sustain, you know, for long-term performance. So they have a superior resources, especially those resources that actually you know, very much you know, not imitable. So these are actually part of how they can sustain their competitive advantage. And then in this theoretical orientation, or the resource-based view also argues that, you know, with regard to firm performance, is actually very, very closely related with the organizational resources that the firm own, and also the capabilities. Okay, so the concept of resources, basically we are looking at the productive capability, including tangible asset, okay, and also the intangible asset. Okay, and then the intangible assets such as patent right is actually related to intellectual capital, related to the knowledge. Okay, and then these are resources that are very, very important, where we have to exploit, okay, for innovation. And then resources also asset and capabilities that are available and useful and responding to market opportunities or threats. Okay, so that's actually the viewpoint of resources. So, you know, there are also the view about asset versus capabilities. Okay, so capabilities basically within the process, you know, in business routine from the organization, because it is capability that enables the activity in a business process to be carried out. Okay, for example, that having the online learning right now, UNIMAS need to create, you need to have the ELIT, as a learning management system, part of the knowledge management tool for lecturers, for students, okay, because we manage the learning process in there, okay. So ELIT is an example of the knowledge management system that being used in our context here, okay. So the organization must have those IT capabilities, so then we can have this kind of business process, meaning that prior conducting online teaching with you, okay, to be done, okay. So it is a firm specific, okay, and then capabilities is very firm specific, okay. Then you also can have ordinary resources, which is actually very general, okay. And then ownership of capability cannot easily be transferred from one organization to another, okay. So the primary purpose of the capability is to enhance productivity of the other resources that the firm possess. So for example, with ELIP and also with Puan Rohaya, having my experience, my skill, because I'm also a worker or employee of UNIMAS, a lecturer of UNIMAS, I'm actually human resources, okay. So I'm part of the resources. So when I can combine with the use of ELIT very effectively, then it's actually related to the productivity and innovation, okay. So these are actually the simplest concept how I can translate to you. So what a resource-based view assume that, so those resources and capabilities possessed by competing firms may differ. Heterogeneity, meaning that it is actually very different, okay? And then these differences can be last is actually when the resource immobile, meaning that the resource actually fixed with that, what you call this, place, okay? So it can create the long lasting. So if a firm possesses a resource or capability that is not currently possessed by numerous other competing firms, the condition of resource heterogeneity is, and a firm may obtain at least a temporary competitive advantage. What it says is that the competitive advantage can only happen when one company actually have that resources that actually not other company not having that, okay. If you can recall, Kodak company is a 100 years company, more than 100 years company, but it gone bankrupt, okay. It's liquidated, there's no longer Kodak, okay. I think your time is actually coming from the digital time, but in our time, we have a camera, we have to buy Kodak, we have to go to the film, what you call the processing store, bring this Kodak, to process and to get the picture, okay. At that particular time, Kodak is actually blooming because Kodak have that technology, okay. But throughout 100 years, like a few years ago, I think about 7 or 8 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, they start to losing their competitive advantage. Why? Because other competing firm actually having other resources that actually taking over the market share. Okay, so and also they are not, so they are losing that competitive advantage. We also have the what you call the concept that call a resource is immobile if firms without a resource thus face a cost disadvantage in developing, acquiring, and using that resource compared to firms that already possess and use it. Okay, then that firm that already possess that resource can have a sustained competitive advantage. So if you have a resources also, sometime what you call this, you need to ensure that the immobility is actually, the resource actually can be mobile so that you can actually make use of the resources. Okay. Okay, let's see the simplest way to explain to you. Okay, so the simplest way to say is to look at this resource-based model of competitive advantage. Okay, so first, is the resource or capability is valuable? Okay, no, then what you call this, it will go into the competitive advantage temporary. Okay. If it's actually yes, is it heterogeneous distributed across competing firms? This is no. I mean, you are equal with them, competitive parity. Okay, but if yes, you have to ask again whether that the resource is actually imperfectly mobile. Okay, if it's actually no, then you only gain temporary competitive advantage. But if it's actually yes, then you can sustain competitive advantage. This is also how you can apply in the looking at the organizations such as Google, such as Facebook, and so on. Okay, For example, if you're looking from the resources that are actually mobile, that can sustain their competitive advantage right now. So what they have is actually really, for example, let's look at Facebook, okay? So it start with Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, with few students, but it start to expand the network itself. They have the billions of the user of Facebook right now, okay? And now they are also tackling WhatsApp, all those, meaning that they are actually keep mobilizing their resources, keep building their capabilities, and making the resources valuable. Then they reach to the sustained competitive advantage. Other firms very hard to imitate, this kind of move. So these are actually the context, the simplest context of the resource-based model of competitive advantage. Halawi et al. Actually looking at the resource-based view of knowledge management for competitive advantage, just to recap on their research model, so that you can actually understand from your levels how it works within the concept of the knowledge management application as part of the source of the competitive advantage. So first, we need to make sure that there are actually infrastructure being setting up, okay? Because these are actually where we talk from the point of view of capabilities. The ICT must be there, information technology infrastructure. The community of practice have to be there, the organization structure, the corporate culture, So the what you call it, the physical environment also have to be there. So these are actually the important side for the infrastructure. Now we also look at the quality. So what are actually the aspect of the quality that actually lead to the implementation? You can actually apply those tools sort like that you are doing in your case study later on, and then understand from the point of view of threat opportunity, and also look from the strategy on the innovation and learning. So once you can actually put this perspective here, then you are actually able to leverage that actually knowledge itself can become rare, valuable, non-substitutable, imperfectly immutable, okay? And finally, after you actually having that, then it actually lead to sustained competitive advantage. So that's actually the easiest way where you are actually applying the resource-based view to look from the Facebook, all right?